If you have ever waited at a railway crossing late at night, you have seen it. Three white lights coming out of the darkness, one high up in the middle, two smaller ones down low on each side. They form a perfect triangle, and they grow bigger and brighter as the train gets closer. It feels like something that must have always been there, but it is not. For more than 100 years, every train in the world ran with just one single headlight. Only one. So what made railways add two more lights? And why did it take so long? The story starts a long time ago, when trains first began running at night. Back then, there were no electric lights at all. Workers simply lit a fire on a small open cart and pushed it in front of the engine. The fire gave a weak orange glow that lit up only a short piece of track ahead. It was barely enough to see a fallen tree or an animal standing on the rails. The driver was almost blind in the dark, trusting luck more than light. Soon, people started using glass lanterns with a candle inside, which gave a little more light and did not blow out in the wind. After some years, oil lamps became common, and later kerosene was used as fuel. These kerosene lamps were big and heavy, sometimes painted with pretty pictures on the metal case, but even the brightest of them gave only a dim yellow light compared to what we use today. Everything changed when electricity arrived. Companies began testing electric lamps on trains, and one early type, called the carbon arc lamp, was so strong that it could blind the driver of another train coming from the opposite side. That was a new problem nobody expected. Around the end of the 1800s, a safer and steady electric headlight was finally made for regular use, and soon many railways started fitting it on their engines. By the middle of the 1900s, a strong round headlight with a curved mirror behind it became standard on almost every train. This single light could show a person standing far away, almost as long as 2 football fields. Rules were even made that said the headlight must shine with a certain minimum brightness. It looked like the lighting problem was solved forever. But there was a hidden problem that no one had thought about. A single bright light, no matter how strong, could not tell a person standing at a crossing how fast the train was coming or how far away it still was. Think about a car at night. It has 2 headlights spaced apart, and your eyes and brain use the gap between those 2 lights to guess the car's speed and distance. But a train had only one light. It could be far away and moving fast, or close by and standing still, and a person's eyes simply could not tell the difference until it was too late. A loaded train is thousands of times heavier than a car, and it needs a very long distance to stop completely. The driver of the train cannot turn or brake in time if someone misjudges the distance. This simple fact, one light gives no sense of speed, quietly caused accidents for many, many years. Picture yourself sitting in a car at night, waiting at a crossing. Far down the track, you see a small white glow. It does not seem to move much. It does not seem to grow much either. Your eyes tell you that you have plenty of time, so you decide to cross the tracks quickly before the train arrives. But that small glow was not far away at all. It was a heavy train moving at high speed, and the light only looked steady because a single point of light simply cannot show motion the way 2 or 3 points can. By the time the driver realizes the train is close, it is often too late to react. Train drivers understood this danger better than anyone. They could see the fear in it every single night, watching a car sitting on the tracks ahead, unaware of how fast the engine behind that one lonely light was really moving. The first real attempt to fix this did not come from a railway engineer, it came from a firefighter. In the 1930s, a man who worked putting out fires in Chicago noticed something simple. A moving light catches human attention much faster than a light that just stays still. He convinced a local railway to test his idea on one of their trains. The result was a mechanical headlight that swung its beams side to side and up and down in a moving pattern, almost like tracing a figure 8 in the air. People called it by a special name, and it worked surprisingly well. Drivers noticed a moving beam long before they would have noticed a steady one. Other railways liked the idea and began fitting similar swinging lights on their own trains. A rival company soon made another version that moved in a circle instead of a figure 8. For about 20 years, these swinging headlights were a common and exciting sight, especially on fast passenger trains passing through busy towns. But these moving lights had a weakness. Inside them were small gears, motors, and moving metal parts that constantly needed oil, repair, and adjustment. Keeping hundreds of these lights working smoothly across a whole railway was expensive and slow. When railway companies started trying to save money in the 1960s and 1970s, they began removing these swinging lights one by one. Within a short time, almost no new train came with them. After decades of experimenting, trains were back to where they started, just one single headlight glowing alone on the front. And sadly, people were still getting hurt and killed at crossings because they could not judge the speed of an approaching train. While American railways were removing their swinging lights, something quietly different was happening far to the north, in the mountains of Western Canada. A railway line there passed through rocky hills where landslides sometimes dropped large stones onto the track without warning. A train running at night, with only one light pointed straight ahead, might not see a rock lying just off to the side of the rails until it was already too late. So workers on this line came up with a simple, practical fix. They added 2 extra lights, mounted low on the front of the engine, pointing slightly outward toward the sides of the track. These were not meant to swing or move. They were fixed lights, made only to light up the ditches on either side of the rails so the crew could spot danger early. Railway workers simply called them ditch lights. What happened next was a happy surprise. These ditch lights did more than just show rocks on the tracks. Combined with the main headlight above them, the 2 low lights created a triangle shape that could be seen from very far away. And because there were now 3 separate points of light instead of 1, people watching from a distance could finally judge how fast the train was moving and how far away it still was. It was an accidental discovery. The Canadian workers were only trying to see rocks in the dark, but they had actually solved the much bigger problem of crossing safety without even realizing it. A serious accident in the 1970s, where a train crew could not see debris on the tracks in time, led to an official investigation. The investigation found that ditch lights would very likely have prevented the accident. Because of this, Canada made ditch lights a legal requirement for every train in the country in 1975. Here is the part of the story that is hard to understand. The United States knew about Canada's success. Canadian trains had been running safely with ditch lights for years, with clear proof that they worked. But south of the border, almost nothing changed. Railway companies did not want to spend money fitting new lights onto thousands of old engines unless the government forced them to, and for a long time, the government did not force them to. Meanwhile, thousands of people were still being hurt or killed every year at crossings, mostly because drivers misjudged the speed of an approaching train. It took the safety agency in charge of American railways many years of testing different types of lights, moving beams, fixed triangle lights, flashing lights, before they were finally convinced enough to act. On March 6, 1996, the rule finally came. Every lead engine running faster than 20 miles an hour through a public road crossing had to carry 2 extra white lights, in addition to the main headlight, arranged to form a clear triangle shape. The rule was very specific about exact height and spacing, and each extra light had to be extremely bright. Railways were given about 2 years to fit every single engine with the new lights, or else the engine would be forced to slow down to a crawl at every crossing it passed. There was one small exception. Very old historic trains, built before the end of 1948 and not used for regular passenger service, were allowed to keep their original single light, which is why some famous old steam engines still run today with just their old classic headlight instead of the modern triangle. What followed was one of the fastest equipment changes in railway history. Within a couple of years, almost every train running in North America had been fitted with the new 3-light system. Different railway companies chose slightly different styles. Some liked their extra lights to flash on and off to grab more attention, while others kept them steady. A few railways even added ditch lights to the back of their engines as well as the front, since their engines sometimes ran in either direction. The reason the triangle works so well is simple. A single dot of light gives your brain nothing to measure. But three lights, arranged in a fixed pattern, let your eyes see the shape slowly growing wider as the train comes closer, and that widening shape is exactly what tells your brain how fast something is approaching. It is the same trick that makes two headlights on a car easier to judge than one, just taken a step further with a triangle instead of a pair. The lights themselves kept improving. Old-style bulbs were later replaced with brighter and longer-lasting halogen bulbs, and in the years after 2010, railways slowly began switching to LED lights, which last far longer, use much less power, and even come with built-in heaters to stop snow from covering the lens in winter. Today, almost every new engine leaves the factory with bright LED headlights and ditch lights built in as a standard feature. Even so, the danger has not fully disappeared. Every year, thousands of crossing accidents still happen, and most of them are caused simply by drivers not correctly judging how close or how fast an approaching train really is. The numbers are far lower than they used to be decades ago, thanks to these three lights along with better gates, signals, and public awareness, but people still lose their lives at crossings even today. The triangle of light does its job perfectly. It clearly shows the shape, the speed, and the distance of a massive train bearing down through the dark. But it can only protect someone who is actually looking. The next time you are stopped at a crossing and you see those three white lights slowly growing wider in the darkness, remember what they represent: nearly 200 years of trial and error, a firefighter's simple idea, a Canadian railway that solved a problem it wasn't even trying to solve, and a rule that took 20 long years to finally arrive. Three lights, forming one unmistakable triangle, because a single light, however bright, was never truly enough to keep people safe.